You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope you all are well. So, we have talked many times over the past, we're going on 4 years, which is shocking, years on this show, about how midlife and menopause can really be the perfect time to try something new. Whether it's mountain biking, which is this week's guest specialty, or surfing, which has come up a bunch of times on the show, and I still need to get on. Hopefully, maybe this January, we'll see, or skiing, or whatever it is. Trying a new sport frees you from the endless self-comparison that can come after years or even decades of being in the same sport. And it infuses you with the confidence that comes with tackling new challenges. And it is never too late, and you are never too old. With skills training, you can learn from the ground up at whatever pace is comfortable for you. And you also don't need to be a newbie to benefit. Brushing up on the fundamentals of sports like mountain biking can help ease the anxiety that many of us experience. I am one of them. I have written about this many times, and it comes up in our group as our hormones swing during this time of life. It can help when you find yourself freezing on a feature you've done a million times, or just finding yourself scared to even engage in your sport. And honestly, it's something I've considered myself multiple times and probably will pursue for all the reasons we talk about in this show with this week's guest, mountain bike skills coach Karen Brooks. Karen knows all about all of this as she helps women of all ages and abilities, as well as her own perimenopausal self, learn, grow, and conquer physical as well as mental obstacles. You can learn more about her and her work at fullpsychadventureteam.com. I'll put a clickable link in the show notes to make that easy. Karen is actually also a longtime friend of mine. We have known each other for many years. So I was pretty excited to learn that she is a member of our audience and that she wanted to contribute to this conversation. And I really appreciated everything she had to say and how vulnerable and open she was. So I really do hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. All right. As usual, give us a follow over at Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Come on in and join our private Hit Play Not Pause Facebook group where you can interact with 31,000 women just like yourself. Sign up for my free weekly Feisty 40 Plus newsletter where I break down all the training and nutrition and other tips you need to know as a 40 plus active woman. And very quickly before I get to it, thank you so much to Previnex for their continued support. I get so many messages from women who cannot believe how much their joint health product, Previnex's Joint Health Plus product, has eliminated their aches and pains. And all I can say is, me too. I don't know what I'd do without it. So thanks, Previnex, for your continued support of our show. Enough of me. Let's have a few words about those awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Okay, Karen, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you reached out to me as we were talking about before I hit record. The whole menopause transition can really wreak havoc on active women in many ways. I hear constantly from mountain bikers in our group, and we're going to talk a lot about mountain biking because, that is your expertise and we're talking about skills training here. But I think the conversation that we're going to have transcends mountain biking.
Yeah, I think it does too. Um, yeah, it's interesting. So my passion, how I got into this mountain biking, um, but I have recently sought the expertise of a personal trainer to along those same lines. And that might come up later, but yeah, it helps so much, like just with so how I got into this, I've been mountain biking for a while since college, and most of us, you probably experienced this too. The old school way to do it is just to go out with people that knew more than you,
Mostly
and
men, in my case, like a bunch of dudes
and
that are trying to thrash each other, and I'm just hanging on for dear life, crashing into rocks, falling over my bars. Yeah, that's how I learned.
exactly, exactly. We probably have some,
I
some
have so many scars.
from that phase, and yeah, so often we'd be the only woman,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, or if there's another woman, there'd be sort of a little bit of unspoken,
Mm.
like jockeying for
Mm.
position.
Mm.
Um, and it was only later that I got to be in positions of like riding with other women and like, wow, this is so wonderful, so supportive. And then through that, I kind of found out about like that there's opportunities for skills coaching. And I mean, skills coaching for mountain biking hasn't really been around that long. Um, I first got certified in 2014, so 10 years ago. Found out about it when I, because previously been the editor of Dirt Rag and Bicycle Times magazines. That's how we know each other from the, bicycle media stuff.
Yep.
Um, and I can't remember what year. I tried to look it up. All that stuff is gone from the internet, but there was a little blurb I put in them in Dirt Rag about a new organization that was certifying coaches. I was like,
Mm.
wow, that is so cool. And kind of modeled off um, ski, ski resort, like ski lessons,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense, makes it safer. People can go to a resort and have more fun. I was like, man, I really want to do that. And at the time, I think the only place, at least that I knew of, that was offering it was in Indiana. And it became
I just gave her a strange face like Indiana. I expected you to say British
Whistler
Columbia.
or something.
Yeah, I expected you to say Vermont. And you're like Indiana.
Yeah, right. And I think there also was some stuff in Canada, as it turns out, happening around the same
Yeah.
time. Um, IMBA then kind of absorbed or bought this organization that was doing it, and for a while it was under IMBA's umbrella. When I first got certified, it was a program of International Mountain Bike Association. Um, that one has since split off. But at any rate, I was like, that's such a great idea. And a friend of mine locally, we had sort of been informally trying to help women with advice. Every once in a while we do go to this event and have like a women's clinic. We really didn't know what we were doing. But it was like just,
I taught at some of them. I didn't know what I was doing either. You're just a warm body with some skills, hoping you can, through osmosis.
Right now, okay, this is a call out to anyone in the bad old days who I gave a lesson to before I was certified. Please come back and see me and get a free lesson. And I'm sorry for any bad advice that I gave you.
You were doing your best. We all were.
Right. But honestly, it was a lot was the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, the first time that I ever went to like a women's clinic was late 90s before Dirt Rag with Sue Haywood and a couple other people in West Virginia. And that was amazing.
The
It was
queen.
so cool. At Slady Fork, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, I came away like I'm still confused about how to do X and Y. Like I'm still terrified of slippery routes. I still don't know what to do with a steep downhill. Like I love these women, look up to them so much, and it was so transformative, but yet I still don't have the skills. So yeah, mountain bike training. So when I left Dirt Rag, I found out about a a coach certification at Snowshoe, like literally a few months later. Called up my friend Elizabeth, who we'd been doing this with. Was like, hey, we got to go. She's like, yeah, we got to do it. Went down and did it, and it was eye opening. I was sort of taken apart as a rider and put back together. It was the beginning of that process. I was
Oh, I
mostly
like
taken.
that.
I came away like I thought I knew how to ride a mountain bike, and I apparently don't know what the hell I'm doing. It was taught by Shams March. You know that name. He's still involved. It's now the Bicycle Instructor Certification Program, BICP. Um, and I was just like, wow, this is like a fire hose of information. And some of it didn't sink in until later. Riding later, I was like, oh, that's what they meant. That's what he meant about cornering. This is how you're supposed to. Oh, now it feels so much better. And it was like mind blowing. And then there's another certifying body, PMBIA, Professional Mountain I'm going to mess up the PMBIA. That's the one that's based out of Canada. I have kind of gone back and forth and got certified different levels from both of them. I enjoy having two different philosophies. Um, but then I started working for Ladies All Ride, which is
Hmm.
a company that does like women's mountain bike camps. That's really, a transformative experience, but much more professional in terms of hiring coaches that are certified. And like that was awesome because they helped us a lot learn how to coach. Like we'd have a pre-ride day where it was almost like a clinic in how not only how to do things, but how to teach how to do things, which is like
Totally.
another level.
Totally.
Awesome, awesome. And I started with them in 2015. I've done like, at least one a year, sometimes several. Um, and it's, yeah, the journey from there has been just really amazing. I've done a bunch of different, um, for like one-off organizations, some different companies. We had until recently a indoor bike park in Pittsburgh called the Wheel Mill, and I was doing a weekly clinic there and a couple different yearly um, events for women and for everyone. Um, so yeah, it was just so transformative for my riding, but also for myself, just to like really take a deep dive into how to do some of these things. And like, there's certain skills that you pick up and certain ones that are just a mystery.
Yeah, totally. You
you
mean
know,
without skill training?
without skills training.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, to
Like,
this day. I've often thought like I need to like we'll talk about that. I'll get to it. But yes.
hey, yeah, let me know. We
Yeah.
meet in the middle of
Yeah.
PA. um, but yeah, and I love to be involved with it because I love to help people that are beginners, but also folks that have been doing it for a while and like skip the steps where you're crashing and you know getting afraid for no reason. um it's wonderful to like know how to do things and take it step by step and like break it down. um and it's weird because like I said before we hit record, I'm 51, and yet I feel in a lot of ways like I'm riding better than I ever have. I'm not
Mm.
necessarily faster. I don't necessarily care about being faster, but I want to be able to do cool things and like handle things, drops and jumps and like scary sets of rocks and all the things that I used to look at and be like, nope, that's not for me. And like, even today, if I say it's not for me, I know why. And I know the steps that I could take to get there eventually, maybe. Or I could say, no, that's going to be outside of my realm. I'm not going to do Red Bull hardline or anything like that. But
Totally. Totally. There are lines no matter how many skill sessions you do. Right.
yeah, right. Um, as an aside, it is amazing to see the levels of women in like technical mountain bike stuff,
Yeah.
crank work, and all that. It's so inspiring. I don't know. I don't know how much of that it's probably not due to skills because some people are just naturally talented and they just go for it. But um, I've been really privileged to work with women that are like pros in that area that as fellow coaches, and it's just amazing to get to watch them in action and learn from them. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. So I have a couple of questions. I have a lot of questions. But the first one I want to start with is let's talk about the woman who is in this demographic, and I talk about all the time like trying something new. There's a lot of self-comparison out there. There's a lot of, I mean, it's just like a very angsty period of life for many many women, and I'm just like, try something new, take a break, go learn something new. And why do you think like mountain biking particularly, or any skill sport like this, but let's stick with mountain biking, is good for women in this demographic?
Yeah, great question. Because on the face of it, if you were to tell someone, "Oh, I'm in my 50s and I'm going to learn how to mountain bike," most people around you would be like, "What? No, you're not. That's
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, totally.
You're going to get broken." But okay, so um, I think mountain biking is wonderful, partly because of the atmosphere of camaraderie. Like the people that do it tend to be fairly laid back and welcoming. Um, Physiologically, I think it's got some advantages. It's a sport that combines some cardio with some skill, and there's some impact. It's not too much impact. Road cycling, you you've heard about like some road cyclists have a problem where their bones become brittle because
Mm,
they're not, actually. Whereas I just heard on your podcast about about running causing issues. This is kind of a happy medium, a little bit of impact. Um, I like being out in nature too. The trails are beautiful. Don't have to worry about cars. I've talked to a lot of people that are started as road cyclists, got into gravel, and are kind of becoming curious about the mountain bike stuff, like scooching
yeah,
over the dirt side of that spectrum. And yeah, there's a lot of overlap with gravel and mountain biking. You don't have to jump right into the stuff that looks
totally.
scary, you know. Um, yeah, so it's got a lot to recommend it, I think.
And there's something, um, I mean, you don't have to be an adrenaline junkie and it doesn't have to be about that, but there's something a little cool about being a little exhilarated, afraid, at this age, learning something new, within a safe boundary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and unlike the bad old days of just tossing yourself down the hillside after
Yes.
like you can find, even if you don't choose to take lessons, you can often find a group of women to ride with that will self-select, and like it's so much
Yeah.
better now in terms of expectations. Like a group ride will say, this is a beginner pace or this is
Yep.
intermediate. You can look at video of the trail you're going to do ahead of time on different apps, different websites. You can, go out and walk a trail just to check it out. Um, going with other people is always the best, but like I think it's really helpful for your self-esteem, I feel like, to challenge yourself, but in a safe and controlled
Yeah.
way. And it's such a thrill to get to do something and look back and be like, oh my gosh, I just rode that. I never in
Yep.
a million years would have, you know, it's so often like at a weekend clinic, I'll hear someone say, okay, I want to do X, but I'm terrified, or I don't belong here straight up, or other things like that. And at the end, they're like, I can't believe what I did, and I'm so proud of myself, and it's amazing. And they just have this inner glow that's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that really bleeds into the rest of your life, your daily life. If you've conquered something that's physically challenging and scary, and then you're like kind of going around with a bit of a strut. Like,
100%. I don't know if you know Nancy Etzlow. Is that her last name? She's on my side of the state, but I ran into her at a mountain bike race. She's a very slight older woman, and I'm only saying older because she's older than me. But she was 61, and she had just learned with our mutual friend Harlan. And
yep.
the stuff that woman is doing, full face, going down the side, I'm just like, holy, and it's all within herself. It was all a systematic learning process, and it's incredible.
I've been privileged to have Nancy as a student actually a couple times. Um, once at a camp that Harlan organized and once at
Yeah.
Snowshoe, actually. Um, yeah, she's such a badass. I love her. But yeah, it's a great example of, and like she was a pretty hardcore road cyclist, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I maybe triathlon or other like that, that kind of side of things. Yeah, doing downhilling. And it's so cool.
It's
I
so
want to be
cool.
where I grew up.
Yeah, no, me too. Like it's so cool. So let's talk a bit about the women who aren't starting but are experienced, and maybe even experienced in mountain biking. But I hear from this all the time. It comes up in our group all the time. I have written blogs about it, that one of the early symptoms of menopause is anxiety. And there's a kind of a cool study on how estradiol works with the fear response and fear extinction response. And you can just find yourself freezing on a feature you've done 100 times. You can find yourself anxious about a trail you've ridden a million times. And it's really discouraging. It's very difficult. And hormone therapy can help with these things. It's not a guarantee. I know people who use it and still sort of like have to self-talk themselves, but I went through that, and it did occur to me, like it really did occur to me at that time. I think I might have even reached out to Sue Haywood and been like, I need to come down. And she's like, what? Because we've raced together. And it's just, but it was because of that, because I thought, I wonder if I just take my brain through some skill training because I never had skill training. I learned like you and I like I learned going over my bars, and I think part of my
Mhm.
brain still probably remembers that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think like I was like I wonder if I just systematically, like you said, broke it down, I could more easily overcome some of that. Do you have thoughts there?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing up the hormonal element because I've had that even just recently, like hesitating on a thing that I've done 100 times and be like, why am I stopping? What the hell's wrong with me? And then it's really easy to spiral into negative self-talk, like just do it, which isn't really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes I almost have to put myself like teacher self, riding self, and like teacher self has to tell riding self what to do.
Right.
But what I would say to someone is that, okay, we're going to take a few steps back and break it down. Um, One of my favorite phrases with this is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
You break it down into smaller steps. And in that case, like, let's say it's a drop on a trail. And by drop, I mean from one level down to another, where you're going
Yep.
to have to catch a little bit of air. Let's find something that resembles that, but is smaller and maybe
Hmm.
a lot smaller, and let's work on the technique on the smaller things, and even let's take more steps back and work on body position. That's all of our clinics, all of our lessons, all of us certified coaches start with what we call fundamentals, the basic position of your body on the bike and how you're going to move around on top of the bike, how you're going to manipulate the bike using your body weight. um, Even like on up to pros, like any kind of lessons or like corrections of techniques is going to start there. And it's a good way to warm up, but it's also a good way to just kind of wipe the slate clean a little bit. Look at maybe if there's some bad habits you've fallen into. Because, in the battle days, there's stuff that worked. You maybe don't know why it works, and maybe it's actually not always going to work.
And I was fit and strong and stubborn enough just to do it, just to plow through it.
Right. So yeah, and then you gradually build up, like, and take that, a couple smaller things, do it and with good technique, and like rewrite your memories essentially. A
Hmm.
lot of it is,
Hmm.
you have a bad memory, whether it's hesitating or crashing, and you have to rewrite that just like you're rewriting bad files on your computer. And enough repetitions where things have gone perfectly or well, and you can do it, and it's gradually ramping up to the height or the whatever it is that you want to attack. And then it's like, and like personally, I love to do where, okay, I have this thing at this height or level. um I'll do one, two, three, easy, medium, and then the challenge thing right after another, once I've worked on the smaller things. That helps so much because then you're like, I know what to do, I know what to do. You've got the muscle memory going, and then you can do it, and then you can look back and be like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it is fine, and even if you scare yourself a little bit, it's like, okay, I handle that. And it's also perfectly fine to decide, okay, what I just did is going to be a little bit outside my comfort level. I'm going to dial it back, and that's okay. A lot of us put pressure on ourselves, as you know, like so many different ways. Um, and it's okay to be like, okay, I'm not comfortable with that today. There's so many factors. I mean,
Totally.
there's hormones, there's the weather, how you're feeling that day. Um, and if you're getting the support and everything else is going all right, try not to beat yourself up if like
Yeah,
today's not.
no, that's very important. And I've had on like legendary rock climbers, who are in their 40s and 50s who are dealing with the kind of things we're talking about, and the consequences become a little higher even depending what you're doing, and they're all about that. They're like, you just have to like be like, it's not my day, it's okay.
Yeah. And something else that you can do if it is not your day and you're going to accept that and be like, okay, that's great. Um, you can go up to the thing, even roll up to it and visualize yourself doing the rest of it. That in a lot of ways counts as practice to your brain. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure what the technical terms for that is, but like visualization is, leads to muscle memory in
Totally.
strange
Their
pathways.
studies support that very well. I mean, they
Yeah.
really do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like if, and like we always say, if in a group setting, if you're not feeling it today, watch other people do it and try to absorb and listen. And, that helps to calm yourself down and like take in that information. There's something called the affective filter. And I guess it came about with second language learning.
Hmm,
And that is that if you are nervous or, if you have anxiety, you can't take in new information. Um,
that makes sense.
so yeah, there's three factors. There's motivation, self-confidence, and anxiety. If the motivation's there, that's great. Self-confidence is great, but if the anxiety is too high, you cannot absorb new information. So we have all kinds of, there's lots of different things you can do to lower that anxiety so that you can take in that information. And like another instance of needing professional help after some injuries, I saw a sports psychologist
Mm,
who helped me learn like breathing techniques. Um, there's like the tapping thing, and I forget what that's called, but
I know what you're talking about.
it
Yeah. That has
activates
come
your,
up on the show before.
okay, yeah, to like lower your heart rate. It's almost like biofeedback to
Yeah.
help you calm down.
Had you
Um,
had a crash? That you
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting because we were talking about like I'm firmly in perimenopause, but I think looking back, some of the symptoms were masked by the fact that I had some injuries. And like, I guess it was 3 years ago, 21. Um, I broke my wrist and then like 3 months later broke my ankle. Both of them were pretty bad. And
on the bike or off the bike?
on the bike, yes.
Okay.
Um, and like the first one, I was trying something that was outside of my comfort zone, didn't listen to my own advice, wasn't prepared, went out like, I was with my friend who drove in to see me and she could ride it just fine. I'm like, oh, it looks fine. I know that she's better at that. They were like really big jumps, meaning going
Mm-hmm.
up, over, down.
Yep.
Didn't pump up my tires, wasn't wearing my full face, was completely unprepared, didn't warm up at all. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna hit this and crashed, broke my wrist, whomp, it was like crooked. Yeah. Um, and I went through that one like, oh, I know how to do this. I have other friends and colleagues who've crashed, and I was posting things on Instagram like, oh, this is fine. I know how to do this. I was still riding. I had hardware to keep my wrist straight
Yep.
with various casts. Was still hitting jumps like that. Um, in
As
fact,
we do.
the surgeon is a mountain biker too, and he's like, I know you. I'm gonna make you be in a cast longer because otherwise you're gonna break the hardware. I'm like, oh, all right, fine. Um, I felt like I mentally was great, got through it all, got the hardware taken out, and was not ready for another recovery. I thought, okay, I'm all done, even though I could barely move my hand, and was trying to just ride like normal. Went to the jumps at the indoor bike park, the tiny, tiny little ones had done like hundreds of times, and couldn't hold on to the handlebar
Oh my
because
God. Oh my God.
hit the deck and broke my lower leg basically, and my
Oh, dude. I'm so I can so relate.
and yeah, it's a common story, right? You get one injury and try to push through, and like I've heard that over and over. And the second one hit me pretty hard though. I was like kind of went into a shell. I was like, in an almost literal pain cave, like sitting on the couch, like not talking
Yeah.
to anybody, didn't post on Instagram, didn't want to admit it, and all this stuff. So I had to reach out to a sports psychologist and like, you know, climb out of that hole. Um, Coaching actually really helped me because like going back to basics, you know,
Yeah.
is a way to force myself. And if I hadn't been a coach, like I probably would have sought out some coaching and been like, okay, can we just start over? And weirdly, I feel like it helped to be off the bike for like a solid, it ended up being several months. It was like wiping the slate clean
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Um, and like having to start over from those fundamentals and like build brick by brick. I'd like to tell people that like, these fundamental stuff, it seems very easy, but it really is the foundational little bricks at the bottom of the pyramid that you're going to use to like, and if they're crooked or something's not quite right, you're not going to be able to build very high.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, it's so interesting though to hear about perimenopause effects and like the mental stuff because it was, I mean, the all that those broken bones were 3 years ago, right? And like last year, I was thinking to myself, I should be well past that. I'm pretty much recovered, have all the functionality back. Why am I still hesitating? Why am I still going really slow down these certain trails? What the heck is wrong? And didn't really put it together until listening to your podcast. I'm like, oh, okay. And like once again, I have to like listen to myself as a coach and be like, no, take a step back.
Yep.
And the other thing, it's so funny because you said this over and over, um, weightlifting.
Yeah. Yes.
That has helped tremendously. And I think like beyond, because there's a big gap between physical therapy and lifting heavy shit.
Yeah.
And to fill that gap in, that was another thing I needed to seek professional help. I had to see a trainer to like help me get from like these real basic exercises they're giving you in PT to like, okay, a little bit of weight, a little bit of challenge stuff on like a Bosu ball
Yep.
to do balance things. It's hugely helpful. Yeah, Suze Falvey is, you might remember that name. She's been a mountain biker
Yeah.
for a long time, done some pro stuff. Um, yeah, that's helped a ton, but weirdly, I think it's also helped with, and I don't know the exact term, but like neuromuscular, like just making my limbs do what they're supposed to do.
It is amazing. I discovered that because I had always been super muscular, so I didn't ever really lift much until I hit the transition myself. I did really basic stuff, and some core work, but it makes I mean, it's kind of like getting more muscles online and synchronized. Do you know what I mean? So you have more muscles at your disposal, and also they are just more effective and efficient. So you can really feel it. Yeah.
That's yeah, and I didn't even understand why. And like recently, I was going back through your podcast, honestly, like with the search function, like okay, looking up muscle and strength, and
Yeah.
like list, um, Sam Moore, I think was
Yeah.
one that really
Yeah. She's
helpful.
great.
But I was so stunned at like the difference because sometimes there was a disconnect. Like I'd be like, I know exactly what to do. Okay, here's the moment, do it, and it was just like nothing was
You didn't
happening.
have the neuromuscular connection. They were just offline. The muscles are sleeping in the corner. You're like, hello, hello. I need you now.
Exactly. And it's like, come on, I've done all the steps that I'm supposed to do, but that was like sort of the missing link.
So interesting. Hmm.
And this kind of dynamic lifting things too, not just sitting there
Yeah.
with it, like, yeah, involving like full body things and a balance things,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah. It's amazing to hear you didn't lift much because I've always admired like you're so
Oh, I
that's
know. I mean, nobody ever believed me. I'm like, I swear to you, I'm not lifting. Like, I was just like very, very muscular. I can't
yeah.
not imagine if I had like really been lifting a lot, what I would have.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, no one ever believed it. I'm like, no, truly, I'm not. Um, but now I wish I could, it's really hard to make it at this point. Yeah, there's no going back to that. But I do feel like 1,000 times better I feel like all those muscles are online. Even if I don't
Yeah.
have the show muscles, I feel like I have the strength, in
Yeah.
those connections. Yeah.
That's what's most important. And it's so, yeah, that brings up another point. Like, I've struggled with this a little bit, even though I know not to, but like just the changes in how your body looks.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and almost thinking, like, looking in the mirror, like, oh, I'm just such a floppy mess. How am I ever gonna mountain bike? Of course I can't do this or that because I don't, I'm not as cut as I used to be or whatever. Um, that's nonsense, first of all. And like,
Thank you for saying that. Yes.
I know that as a
Yeah.
coach, like there there honestly is no correlation between how your body looks and your performance in
Yep.
terms of mountain bike skills.
Yep.
Honestly, I feel like those that I've taught that are in larger bodies have an advantage in balance. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's true, but like certainly in strength in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you do not have to look a certain way to have
100%.
king. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool to see people kind of embrace it, and that, and especially, women our age are like, "Oh, I've let myself get out of shape." No.
Yeah.
You can still, learn skills and have a really fun time, and if via doing that, your body changes some, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's also fine. It really does not matter.
Yeah, and mountain biking, sure, whatever, there's power to weight and gravity for climbing and all that, but for like you're saying, for skills, and you need torque and you need power and you need all those things much more like that. It benefits, you are rewarded um for having more power.
The power to weight ratio thing, I really only think that comes in with longer climbs,
I agree.
which we don't really have in the East,
Yeah.
like, I mean, our short, steep stuff, it
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. If you wanted to go join the Tour de France Feminine or something, but even that, like, we've seen people now that are getting into long distance stuff and larger bodies, and
Oh,
it's
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, There was a point there that we went by, and I
Oh, no, that's okay.
but
Carrie
yeah.
can cut this part. Um, Yeah, I like, this has been brilliant. I mean, I think the only thing that we haven't really touched on is you wanted to sort of talk about the at your age and the little voices kind of thing, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't, yeah, I mean, I like everything you've said has been gold.
Okay,
Like,
awesome.
seriously, it's been really, really, I think this is going to touch a lot of people for real.
That's great. Um, yeah, so the little voices thing, like,
Let me cue
and
you up
okay,
just
yeah.
for my producers.
Yeah.
So all of this has been, I mean, honestly, Karen, I'm so glad you reached out, and and at on the surface level, I'm like, oh, cool, I do think this would really benefit, but I appreciate you really sharing and being vulnerable and heartfelt with it, because I know that this is landing with a lot of people. I know it is. And, one of the interesting things about menopause is it intersects with midlife, and you have this like dueling wrecking balls in your brain sometime, where it also meets ageism, like, and
Absolutely.
when you're a mountain biker, that can sometimes, you're just like, oh, people are like, you're a mountain bike, how old are you? So where do you stand on that?
Firmly against it.
Yeah.
No, it's so interesting how, yeah, and I feel like we get that as women a lot more than the dudes out there mountain biking. Um, People looking askance at you, like, and like those of us that have been into it for a while, like our family and friends know we're into it. It's one thing, but even then, I still got some comments and like some side eyeing, like, well, you had these terrible injuries, you're going to quit, right? That wasn't outright said, but certainly implied. And like, what are you doing trying to do jumps at your age? And
Right.
even some of the
Right.
doctors were like, well, at your age, your coordination is going to fall off. You're going to start having a harder time doing these kinds of things. And
You're
it's like,
51 years old.
no. Well, my oldest fellow coach is 65, I think, maybe 66, Kathy Kraus. I mean, it's not like
Anyway,
it, and but it's like it's hard to sometimes to ignore those things, but um I feel like at the same time, like, getting getting hooked up with some fellow mountain biking women is so helpful for ignoring that stuff. And like having some mentors that are older than you, or younger, but just like being around people that are just doing and not caring helps a ton. And again, like coaching, I feel like we a lot of what we do is mental. It's as much psychology as it is physical stuff, helping people get over things. And yeah, a lot of that is like Lindsay Richter from Ladies All Ride says, you have to get rid of negative self-talk. And I like to emphasize, okay, here's this tree you don't want to hit. Don't think I don't want to hit the tree. You have to focus on the positive. I want to go down this trail right here where
right,
it's nice and smooth. And so,
right.
like, on those lines, get rid of negative self-talk is like, okay, no, we're going to focus on positive self-talk. Yes, I can do this. I'll change
You're
your
break
podcast.
you just froze a little bit. So go ahead
Oh,
and that yeah, you just broke up a bit. Your internet seems to be breaking up a little.
is it better
Yeah.
now?
Um, I can hear you now. You're good. Just now it's better.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Getting rid of self-talk is one way to say it, but focusing on positive self-talk is another. And focusing on all the different things that you might have to change because we're older. Um, but yeah, I mean, I want to be a badass and did you see I don't know if you got a chance to see, but someone on Instagram put out from my old lady body. And there was a poem. Oh, I'm messing this up, but yeah, there's um this part too, but like there was, oh, I can't, there's a poem out there that is like, I'm not training for my
Yes.
sturdy old woman that can do all these things and, that is going through life confidently and independently because I'm strong,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that. And I really that epitomizes sort of what we're doing here with this group for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Well, that was, I mean,
yeah, and it's
truly, truly brilliant. Like, is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure that we covered?
um I guess one thing I wanted to mention is just that there's not necessarily a reason to spend a lot of money. Like, mountain
Hmm.
biking is a sport that can seem like you have
Yeah,
to,
it's a good point.
invest thousands and thousands of dollars in it, and that's not necessarily the case. Um, like, um,
You are
are
breaking up again. I don't know what's happening. Um,
you have to
trying to,
let's see. Mine looks pretty good, but
I don't know if it's mine. I've shut
um,
off everything. It could be, um, I don't know. It could just be the universe. Yeah, I'm trying to see my router from where I am to see if it's a problem on my end, but I can't see it. I'm right by the
yeah,
router, so it's usually not an issue, but um
right. I actually I could go upstairs into the room with my router. I've been in a different room
I mean we
if that would
really
help.
have this one point to make, right? And I think that's a good one. I think it's worth doing it because I do think that the expense is something that comes up and we can just
Yeah.
finish on that.
Yeah, okay.
That's no
Can you
problem
hear
at all.
me now, or is it still kind of
I
fuzzy?
can hear I can like I we've done so well up until this very
Okay.
end. So I mean we can try just to get that last point through
Okay.
and see what happens.
Yeah.
Um I think that would be fine too.
Okay. Yeah.
We can try. Why don't we try just to get that last point through? Because
Okay.
everything
Cool.
looks like the universe is back on. So
Yeah. I
okay.
I don't okay, cool. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that you don't need to spend a ton of money. I mean, on mountain biking in general, but also on coaching.
That's a good point.
There's, there's used bikes out there. There's places you can rent bikes. There's actually a local program to come and try bikes, try mountain biking. There's like a combined beginner clinic with renting a bike for a nominal fee. Um, you don't have to dump thousands of dollars into it. Likewise with coaching, I mean, you can get private lessons. Certainly, you can go to like a beautiful exotic destination women's camp, which if you can afford it is a wonderful thing. But if you can't, like look for just a women's riding group to hang out with a little bit. Sometimes that, amateur advice is really helpful, or just encouragement from fellow mountain bikers is really great. And it's totally worth it to explore and to maybe find something that you love and, um, find something that's going to boost your confidence and your health at the same time.
Yeah, those are excellent, excellent points. And I'm glad you brought them up because, any of these gear sports can look real expensive real fast. And it doesn't have you don't have to, you don't have
Yeah.
to start that way. I mean, if you get into it, getting yourself a nice bike is also if you can is a great thing. But you can get a lot of bike for not a ton of money these days, and it's yeah.
Right now, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
when I started coaching, I was still on my I was on a single speed. Um,
of course you are.
I got a lot of flack for that. Since graduated to full suspension, but it's not necessary. And there's people out there that are kicking ass on, an old steel frame,
Totally.
um, which there's a lot of advantages to a steel frame, like a basic bike. And you can just, you can dabble in it and see if you enjoy it, and maybe find something new that you love and get into it. And then you'll have a bike that in your car. Like,
And if if you are, as we to bring this full circle, even if are experienced and you're finding yourself in that space where you're like, oh, this you're having moments or whatever, like I join us. I think it's worth it. I do think that it's beneficial to just go back, and I think you learn more as somebody who has some experience under their belt too, because you have just so many more reference points.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it can be, like when I start off a coaching group, I like to say that I've been mountain biking for um, nearly 30 years now, but I spent the first 10 years doing it wrong because I didn't know any better and there wasn't coaching. So, I mean, you can learn a lot as a new person, but sometimes it takes a little bit of extra effort if you have habits that are ingrained
Mm,
to undo those.
yeah.
But at the same time, we as coaches have some tricks for that, to like kind of get you out of your habitual way of doing things that may or may not be working for you, and to try something new. Um, but to, those with experience, and like I often see women that are that used to mountain bike that took a long time off to have children and raise children, and their kids maybe have gotten into it through the high school league or
Right.
through the bike park or something like that. And they're like, oh, instead of dropping my kid off and watching them have fun, I want to participate in this now. Do something for yourself. And then that becomes something that the whole family can do together as well.
Yep.
Or maybe the kid drops it and the mom keeps doing mountain
Yeah,
biking.
totally. I actually do see that all the time, and that's a great point. There's so many different benefits to this, and I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get together a hit play not pause group and do some
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
yeah do do some mountain bike skills training. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Kara. I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being just so open with your own journey, and this has been really great. So I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, thank you, Celine. Thank you for what you do, and I recommend your podcast to like all of my students that are of that age, and we talk about it a ton. So it's a really great service to the community that you're doing.
All right. Mutual Admiration Society here. Thanks a lot. Well, that's our show. We are going to take a little podcast summer break here. We didn't take one over the 4th, so we are due. And during the next 2 weeks, we will rebroadcast a couple of our most popular episodes in recent years. Then, when we come on back on August 14th, I am stoked to bring you a podcast on one of our most requested topics: ADHD in women. I sat down with Dr. Kathleen Nadeau, author of Still Distracted After All These Years, to talk all about it. It was a fascinating conversation. So enjoy the Olympics while I'm out. I'll see you when we return. And in the meantime, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, And please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends. And please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.